Okay, then it's time for the last part of this course. So this quality of life section will be a bit different to the others. It's neither about a tool or an operator, but it's more some things that will help it make nicer to use Linux and Bash on the command line. So what is it? We'll talk about background processes. We'll learn how to start them with ampersand and terminate them. We'll also look at some useful terminal shortcuts and their usage, and learn how to edit the bashrc file. And then we'll also learn about using aliases. So first, background processes. Usually, if you start some program, could have input or whatever, it will start processing and then give output, perhaps to screen. And most cases, the terminal will then be unable to accept new commands while the processes are running. And if it's a long program, then that terminal is inaccessible for a long time. In many cases, on the other hand, Linux can do multitasking. So how will you go about making sure that you actually can run other stuff from your terminal? Sure, you could start a new terminal, but maybe you have remote loading to something. So the answer to this is foreground and background processes. And normally when you start a process in a terminal, it will run in the foreground, and there's nothing else you can do until it completes. And the way to solve this is that there is a bash feature that's called job control, and you can use that to move a foreground process to the background, and you can also move it back to the foreground. And you can also start the job directly in the background. So imagine you want to start a job or a process in the background, and you do that by adding an ampersand at the end of the command. So say you had a command and some options, some input, whatever, and then at the end of all that, you put an ampersand. Then it will be sent to the background and the terminal is free to receive input. Of course, it uses resources, but usually not enough that it is actually affecting the runtime. So an example of this could be tar. So imagine you want to create a gzipped tarball set for zipping, C, create the archive, V for verbose, so it outputs, and you probably wouldn't do that when you're putting it to the background. It just lists the files. F is the name that it should take a name, and the name will be this or whatever you want to put there. And then you have some directory that has lots and lots of files and directories in it. So it will take a long time to create an archive and gzip it. So what you do then is you give the command and then you put an ampersand at the end. And then the job will start running in the background. Now, normally you can suspend a foreground job with the command control set. When you do that, the shell will tell you the job is suspended. And when doing so, it will also give you a job ID. And no processing happens while the job is suspended. So that's worth noticing. So this job in the foreground that you're moving to the background, let's assume you started the job normally. It's running in the foreground. You want to move it to the background. The steps to do that would then be to first suspend the job because you want access to the terminal. Then you give the command bg, and that puts the suspended job to the background. And it will then start running again, but now it runs in the background. And you can check how this is going with the command jobs. And you could then, if you wanted, move it to the foreground again, or you can just let it finish in the background. So an example here, we are starting to make a tarball of our download directory. And in this case, we have just filled up our download directory, which I tend to do. I have a ton of stuff there that I should clean out. And if I would want to do a gzip tarball there, it would take a very long time to do so. So I start running it, and then I hit Control Z. That's what is shown here. And then it stops. And it tells me that this job is now suspended, and it has a job ID, which is 1. And it tells me also which process it is that I have suspended. Then I say BG, and that means that I'm sending this job here to the background. So it says, okay, I'm sending job 1, which does this, to the background. And then if I then write jobs, it will show me what jobs I have running, and it tells me there is actually a job running with the job ID 1, and it is doing this. Okay, so you have a background job, you want to move it to the foreground. To do that, then you would give the command FG, and then you would give the job ID. For this above job here, then it would be 1, so %1. So you would say FG, foreground, %1. If you don't give a job ID, then it assumes the current suspended job. So if you just have one job, then there's no reason to give the job ID. So if you want to try this, I have put in this directory under exercises that you got from the table. There's a directory org and quality of life, because the exercises there are both those things. And I put a program there called slowcommand.sh. It doesn't do a lot. I will just show you. It's creating a directory, going into it, and then it just creates a ton of files, throws some minimal amount of text here into each of the files. I'm doing a for loop here. And then it appends some more text, and then it searches in each of the files for the word cat and replacing it with ferret. So this is not doing anything sensible, it's just doing something to have a lot of file it's working on, so it will take enough time that you actually have time to test some commands. And after I have done this, I'm making a copy of each file in the directory. And then I change all instances of ferret back to cat, and then report it has been done. And this should take enough time that you can send it to the background and move it back to the foreground and see some things there. So let's try and start this job. And now this computer is fairly fast, so it may not be slow enough here, but so I started and I press Control Z, and now it is stopped. And I am saying BG. I want it to go to the background, and it says it did so. I'm doing jobs. I can see it's running, and I say FG. It goes back to foreground. I could again, yeah, okay. Then it has been done, so that's good. But yes, if you type reasonably fast, you can use this example here to try these commands here. So you can restart a suspended job, and you can do that either in the background or in the foreground. And remember, you get the job ID with the command jobs. And well, we could try that as well, but I'm just going to remove this directory, lots files. And then I'm going to start my small script again. And I'm going to suspend it. I'm going to say jobs. I will see I have a job in the foreground that is stopped. I'm then going to start it again. FG should be enough. And then it starts running again. I stop it again. I could also say foreground %1 because that's the only one I have here. And it runs again. So if you want to terminate a foreground job or a background job by sending it to the foreground, then you do so with Control C. Remember Control Z suspends it, Control C terminates it. There are other ways of killing a job. You can do so with the command kill and then the process ID. But I won't cover that a lot here. I'll just say that you can get process IDs from, for instance, this command here. Say you were looking for Firefox, so maybe you are getting the processes with some suitable options, human readable, and then you are grepping in that for instance, Firefox or something to get the process ID of the job you want to kill. And then you say kill and give the process ID. Or if that does not work, you can use kill -9 and the process ID, but you shouldn't unless nothing else works, because that tends to kill it very fast and may kill things it shouldn't or do. I mean, it's usually safe, but it's better not to. I will see if I can show anything with that. Yes. Just to show you that it's running. So I'm doing the slow command again, and then I'm doing Control Z, and then I'm going to say PS -EFH, and if I just did that, I get lots and lots of processes for everything that I have that's running. But I could grep in that, and I'm going to grep for the word slow. And then I actually get my process here that is running. You will always get the grep itself because that process was running when you tested it. But you can see here, I'm running the slow command one. And I could go ahead and kill it. And I can do so with the process ID. And you can see here, I don't know if I can find it here. But you can see process ID is the column number 2. So I would go and take this number here and kill it. And let's see if it worked. It did not. So I'm going to repeat it with -9. And then it killed it. The thing was that this was a suspended job, so it's somewhat more difficult to kill. If it was running in another terminal in the foreground, then probably you could have killed it directly with just the process ID. Okay, so let's move to the next part, which is some useful terminal shortcuts and their usage. I'm sure you have already seen that I'm using arrow up and down, and probably you know that, which is just scroll through the most recent commands, and how many it has there depends on how large your history file is, and you can set that in your .bashrc. Tab, if you don't know, then it auto-completes a file or directory or command. So if I start typing and I type SL, and then I just hit tab, and then it auto-completes the name of this script I have here. So, so that is often useful to avoid typing long things. For instance, if I wanted to type the path to this directory, then I might just type the beginning of each word and then hit tab. If there are more options, then it will just show those, and then you just add one more letter or whatever until it's unique. Control C, as I mentioned before, it kills the current foreground process. Control Z suspends the current foreground process. Control A will move the cursor to the beginning of the line. And I think I'm just going to go to the home directory to avoid having such a long prompt here. So let's say that I am typing something and I start typing to send this line to the, and then I realize that I actually wanted to add something else to begin with. So I hold down Control and push A, and then I jump to the start of the line, and then I can edit something here without using arrows to move all the way through the line. So I will add, maybe I'm going to send this line to the, and then I hit Control E to go to the end of the line again. So this makes it faster to move between the beginning and the end of a long line. And Control L will clear the screen. It's the same as if you're just typing clear. So Control L cleared it. Do something here, and then just type clear. It also clears it. Control K deletes the line after the cursor. So if you had typed something and then you realize I want to change something, and then you think, oh, maybe I'll just start all over and hit Control K. If you're using Emacs, you'll see that many of these commands are actually the same that I used there. If I hold down Control and press Y, it actually what's it called? Pastes the thing that you just removed, and that command is also in Emacs. If you want to delete something, you could use Control D. Of course, you could also just use delete. If you want to use to delete the whole line, you say Control U. It deletes everything except the letter used in. And Control W deletes the word before the browser. So I'm going to do Control W, and it removes the word until the next instance of white space it meets. Control P goes to the previous command in your command history. It's the same as arrow up, and you can see the saved history with history. So I'm trying to see that. I say Control P a couple of times. You can see here I go through my recent commands. I could also use arrow. Control N is like arrow down. This is also good. And another very useful thing is Control R, which you use to search in your command history. And that is very, very useful if you remember that you gave a very long command somewhat recently, but you only remember parts of it. So maybe I start saying SSH, and then it's suggesting what I might have been writing, and you can go then just pick it or something like this. So this is very useful, many of these things here. Okay, so let's go to editing the .bashrc. And the bashrc is in your home directory. It's also called $home, and you can also get to it with tilde. So cd tilde would give you the home directory. And cd will go back also to the home directory. And cd minus, of course, goes to the most recent directory. cd $home again. Okay, you know this. And the .bashrc is in your home directory, and it's a script file that's executed on login. And it has some configurations for the terminal session, and it can be used to modify how, for instance, the shell history, aliases, paths, and other things are configured. But remember, like all files or directories with a dot in front, in Linux, this is a hidden file. To see those, you add the flag or option -A to ls. And if you just want to see what is in it, you can use cat. So if I say ls -A, I also get these files here. If I say cat or $home .bashrc, I'm getting the content of it. If I edit it, of course, I need to use my editor. And I will say that either Vim or Nano, or of course, if you are director of the system, you could use Emacs. But that is easiest to use if you allow it to open the GUI. So here I'm going to use Nano. Now I'm already in the home directory, so I'm just going to say nano.bashrc. And then this is my bashrc file. Note, if you're editing your .bashrc file at one of the HPC centers in Sweden, one of the clusters, or elsewhere, it's a really bad idea to add any module load softwares to the bashrc. Because maybe you are using it really regularly, this software that you're loading, and it's not a problem. It's really nice because you're working with it, and then some months later, you forget to even put it there, and now you are starting to use another program which has a different version or a compiler maybe or something, and you are trying to get it to work and nothing works, and it turns out this is because you're already loading a different version of a module or something in your .bashrc. So don't do that. It's safest to not do that in general, because it can interfere and give you weird errors. Also, another thing is, if you're going to make changes to your .bashrc, you might break things. So here, do a backup first. So for instance, copy it to a .bashrc.back or similar first. You can usually find a template, a skeleton version of it in /etc/skeleton. So what do you put in your .bashrc? Depends a lot on what you're working with. But something that might be useful are aliases. We'll talk about that very soon. Environment variables, for instance, Python environments. Paths, library paths to your own installed software. That's very good to put there, because then you don't need to set the path in the shell that you are working in every time before you start working with your software. So you have already added it to the path, so your machine knows where to find it, the executables and things. Any customization of the terminal. Maybe you wanted to color certain type of files, that's common, or when you're doing programming in the terminal, maybe you want specific words to be colored or something like that. In general, anything you want that you need to be persistence between sessions, you can put here. And any changes you make to the .bashrc won't be active immediately unless you log out and log in again, or you source the file. And you can do that either by typing source and .bashrc, or just a dot and .bashrc. Some examples here. you can set the path in .bashrc. We have talked about that before under environment variables. So assume you have installed some software. Now you need to set the path to the libraries and to the binaries so that you can run it and use it with other things. And in this example here, I have put some software in /opt/software, which is common. And I want to add the new path to the old one. So I don't want to overwrite it because I want to keep access to the things I already can access. And that could include some other software I installed in my home directory for user. So I would say export and then path equals $path because I'm setting path to the value it has with $. And then I'm adding a colon because I am adding something new after it. And then I'm adding, there I already had this thing here because this is a previous software I installed and I had added that. And now I'm adding a new bit to it, namely the path to the binary, the executable of my new software I just installed. It is also the case that you need to set the path to the libraries for software. That happens in many cases if you need to actually use the libraries, for instance, when you're programming something. Then you will need to set the ld_library_path. And you do that the exact same way as you do with the path. And those you would put in your .bashrc. I don't think I have any paths set here because this, I don't think I have, because it's not that long since I reinstalled my work computer and I haven't set new paths to it yet. So I'm just using the default ones. And what that is also depends on your system and where you are, or if you're logged into an HPC center. Okay, so things that you could do to customize the terminal, and they could be useful. That is, you could change the number of commands stored in memory during running, and you could set it to 1000. I have set mine to that because it's nice to have a lot of history I can scroll through and look for previous commands. I find that very useful. But you don't want it to be huge, but yeah, you can set this. And there's both the commands that are stored in memory and those stored on disk. Those stored on disk you can only see with history. Those stored in memory you can also scroll through with the arrow up. If you want to append to the history file and don't overwrite it, you can do it like this. And this is a way to make more friendly looking for non-text input files. So there are several different things here. You can set a variable so that you identify the CH root you work in, and that also could be useful. So maybe you don't like the default root, or maybe you want it to change depending on something else that you have put. Maybe you want fancy prompt colors, or maybe you want to see if this is an external, you want to set the title. That is actually something I like to do, and which I don't currently have in my .bashrc. But I do have the fancy prompt. I don't have color in it. Or do I? Yes, I actually add color to it. That's true. But lots of different things you can set. And the color support for alias, you can also set that and see what you want. Okay. So anything you change, then save it and then source it in order to make it active immediately. Aliases. Aliases for commands, that means there are two commands for the same action. And the reason to even make that is usually that you want something that is shorter and or easier to remember than maybe you have this huge long command that you very often use. And then you just want to shorten it to something easy. Aliases, they can be either persistent or non-persistent. Non-persistent is aliases you only want to use for a short time, for instance, during the specific session. And they will go away next time you log out and in again. And they won't be available in another show. But you could want them because maybe you're right now working on something where you regularly need to write a long command, or write a command that's difficult to remember or something. But you're only going to use it for this one project today or something, and tomorrow you don't need it. So in that case, you would say alias, and then whatever name you want to give your alias, and then the command in quotations. And if you, for instance, want to make it easier to list all files with info, including hidden files, then you could say, maybe I just want to write LAH instead of LS minus LAH. So you would just do it this way. Alias, whatever you want to call the command, and then what it should do when you run this. And we can try and do that, yes. So I say LAH, nothing happens because I don't have such an alias. But then I'm going to set this alias. And it's important to remember the quotations. This. And then it works here. Okay. Persistent aliases. What do you do if you want to keep the alias more permanently, and so you can use them from session to session? Then you add them to your .bashrc. And let's open bashrc again. And I actually have some aliases here. You can put the custom aliases at the bottom if you want to. Here I created one for ls minus LART, and I call it my ls. And you could also, instead of putting them in .bashrc, you could create a file called .bash underscore aliases or something. And then you just load that from inside of .bashrc. Okay, so some examples. You would, if you want to do this, you would open .bashrc in your home directory with nano or vim. If you already have aliases, just add new ones after it. If you don't have any aliases, scroll to the bottom and make a comment, say my aliases will be here or something. And then some common aliases that you could have are these ones. So add anything that you feel would make life easier for you then, so you don't have to type long commands that are difficult to remember. Okay, so some exercises. Try and start a job in the background, and you could use this command we looked at, slow command, what I called it, yes. And then start a job, suspend it, send it to the background, see that it runs, use jobs, and then return it to the foreground. And you could make a table of a directory with many files, or you could use the script slow command.sh. And if it's not executable, do so with this command here. Try also the terminal shortcuts and try create a few aliases, maybe the non-persistent ones, and try them out. If there are any of the ones suggested or other ones that you want, then to put those in the .bashrc and source it, and then see that they are now available. Okay. Briefly, we learned about foreground and background processes. We tried some terminal shortcuts. We learned about alias, and we learned about .bashrc and how to edit it. So let's take the exercises. Let's take 15 minutes for that, and then we come back to do the summary and the evaluation.